questions for you. We'll have to have you have the oath again, and then we'll get on with the questions so that you can get out of here.
Good afternoon, Mr. Codrington.
Good afternoon.
Could you stand, please, and raise the Bible in your right hand? And read the oath for us. Thanks.
The evidence that I shall give before the committee shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Thank you. You may sit.
Interesting how he sees it. There you go. Okay, Mr. Trotman.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, Mr. Codrington, how do you determine when a bus should be boarded? Is it because of extreme cost, age? What are the determining factors?
There are two major factors, and that has to do with the age and the maintenance costs on the vehicle.
You can't hear?
I also wanted a clarity in terms of when, because some of these buses, obviously, the cost of repairs were pretty high. Do you have to refer to the finance department before you initiate repairs?
No, sir.
So it's
Yes,
possible that the finance department might not be aware that they could
We have some difficulty hearing you, Mr. Codrington. If you
Okay.
wish, you can release the mask or get closer to the microphone, or both.
Okay, hear me better now?
Yeah.
That would have to come from the board, because that report will go to the board.
No, I didn't quite understand. I asked you when you, if you have to refer to, like sometimes some of these repairs are very costly,
Yeah.
right? So I'm asking, did you have to refer to the finance section to ensure that there were funds available, for instance?
No, that will go to the board, and the board will deal with that.
Okay, so your repairs, whenever you had buses to repairs, you would send a report to the
You
board?
send a report to the general manager, that will go to the board.
Okay, had nothing to do with finance per se?
No.
Okay.
Then the board probably would make the necessary arrangement or write the finance as the case may be.
Well, in accordance with our report, there were many buses that had multiple repairs. So to some extent, why weren't those particular ones boarded? The ones that had to get 4 times the transmission and so on?
Now, I would like to see those reports, because hearing a transmission, getting a transmission 4 times, that ain't relevant. There has to be some error somewhere within the system or something.
You were saying that those boards you would normally,
Sorry, sirs, you both need to
you know,
lift the level a bit.
yeah, okay.
To me?
Move the mic closer to yourself. Yeah, shift it. Bean should help with that.
That's better? There's no adjustment we can make? Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Trotman, go ahead.
Yeah, so we were talking about, he indicated that when buses need to be repaired, you would send a report to the board. You mean for any amount or over certain amounts?
I would say over a certain amount.
Well, what was the certain amount? Let's be certain.
If you're talking about between $35,000.
30 to 30.
Yeah. If my
Because-
memory serves it correct, yeah.
Well, based on our report, we had buses that would have had transmissions change, like for instance, B116 would have had a transmission in May 2013, October 2013, February 2014, May 2015, and so on, and January 2016. That's why I was asking you, on what basis would you determine that a bus should be taken off route or boarded?
All right, let me explain something to you, sir. Transmissions at Transport Board come in series. You have the 1997 series, the 2000 series, the 2004 series, and the 206 series. The 1997 is not compatible with the 2000, nor the 2004, nor the 2006. The 2000 and the 2004 transmissions were a bit problematic from the inception. I think I should let you all know that I was with the Transport Board. This is 46 years. I joined the Transport Board in 1971. So I came right through the system. It wasn't a walk in the park. I had to do a lot of training to arrive at the level I've reached up until when I retire. So I can give you the facts of the transmissions. The 2000 and the 2004 transmissions from the inception were a bit problematic. And you will see the cost on the 2000 and the 2004 transmissions would raise accordingly. Because for the simple reason, between 2008, the company in Brazil that were manufacturing the transmissions for the 2000 and the 2004 went out of operation. However, the 2000 and the 2004 transmissions are the ones they call the MT643R. And the R stands for retarder. And those are the ones that were a bit tricky, so to speak. Because for the simple reasons, the same coolant that cools the engine cools the retarder. And the transmission carries the built-in retarder. And that can get excessively hot, which can also cause a rise in the temperature on the engine. And I've experienced this from the inception. Bringing the 2004 bus out of the port, going up University Hill, I was driving one and I saw the gauge automatically went up, which that is outside of the norm. That shouldn't happen. But when we drill down into what is going on, the 2000 and the 2004 had some issues that we had to fight with. And that was going on for quite some time. And the parts are not easily and readily available because they come directly out of Brazil.
But who chose those buses, Mr. Cotterton? Yeah.
Pardon me?
Who decided on those buses?
Those buses was decided by the board of directors at the time in conjunction with Simpson Motors.
So the buses came out of Brazil?
Yeah?
So nobody went to Brazil to look at them before they came here?
Yes.
So I'm asking who would have gone to Brazil to look at the buses?
I went to Brazil with the 2004 buses. Yeah, with the 2004.
These are the ones that gave you problems as you came up
The
university?
2000 and 2004, the ones with the retarder.
Mm.
However, sir, the terrain in Brazil
Mm.
and the terrain in Barbados
Mm.
is like chalk and cheese.
Mm.
The work that the bus did in Brazil is completely different in Barbados.
Yeah, I understand that, but you're only driving from the port up University Hill. You ain't gone over yet?
But there's what I'm saying. There's what I'm saying, but it has to do with the temperature. Brazil is not as hot as Barbados, so the temperature rises very quickly. So just picture in your mind, sir, coming out of Bathsheba, fully loaded.
But I can't picture that because you made reference to the fact that you drove from the port to the University Hill.
Yeah.
And you recognize immediately there's a problem. So
Yeah.
that had nothing to do with going on Bathsheba yet.
Well, if you want to say that, sir, but I'm trying to give you a broader picture.
Mm.
Because as I said earlier, I said we had to be fighting with the 2000 and the 2004.
So those buses that was a bad bus choice.
That was the manufacturer's defect, so to speak. And we had to be wrestling with it over that period of time. In 1997, we didn't have that issue with the 1997 buses. Because that is a different transmission. That's the MT643, not the R. And the R is retarder. That's a built-in mechanism in the transmission, which assists with the braking efficiency.
All right, sorry, Mr. Trotman, go ahead.
Yeah, I wasn't 100% sure in terms of what that had to do with the frequency of replacement, though, honestly.
Hmm?
I wasn't too sure. Okay, if a particular bus had a problem, but I was asking you why they had to repeat to change the transmissions so often. So I was trying to connect what you were saying to the frequent changes of transmission.
As I said, the MT643R, if one transmission came down with a problem, you'll have to replace it with the same MT643R,
Right. Okay.
because you
And
can't
that-
take the 1997 one
Yeah,
and place in that. That's two different.
Right. So since the transmissions
Transmission.
weren't working well, it means that every 6 months or every year, then you have to replace the transmission.
We will have to work along those lines, sir.
Right. So originally you had indicated that the reason why you change a bus or why you stop using a bus or you board it has to do with the age and cost of maintenance.
Yeah.
So since these buses were very costly to maintain, why did you continue with them then?
Well, that'd be a board decision. That don't come directly from,
Right. Well, like, you were saying that, but initially you indicated that the reason why they're boarded is because of cost.
Mhm.
So now we're demonstrating that they're very costly to maintain,
Mhm.
but we're not boarding them. So it seemed to be a little conflict there in terms of why do you board them? 'Cause on one hand, you were saying it has to do with cost, but then on the other hand, when you're saying when they're very costly to maintain, we're still not boarding them.
but you have to look at the fleet. You can't board all those buses one time. You must have to keep some in the fleet and keep the fleet running.
Okay. So the
Because to board all those buses one time, what would you have on the road?
how many buses there were?
There were 70 and of them.
70.
I will tell you shortly, yeah, about 70.
So tell me something then. Since you recognize that these buses are very costly to maintain, you can't board all of them. One, it means that your original policy doesn't hold. So then what would be your plan with these buses? How would you phase them out so that you wouldn't have this costly repairs all the time?
That's a good question. What we did is try to remove the MT643R from the 2000 and 2004 and replace them with the MT643.
I mean, I'm not too sure many of us would follow what you're saying here in terms of these numbers. They don't really mean much to us. So you might have to elaborate a little bit. In other words, you decide to use a different transmission,
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
right? And the different transmissions, they last any because we still have the frequency.
They last a lot longer than the
A month or so
MT643
more.
in terms of running.
Okay. All right, so the main aim then was to keep a particular fleet level more so than the other factors that we looked at. Your
That's
main
correct.
thing was,
To keep the fleet rolling over and keep the numbers on the road.
right. But so at any one point in time though, did you have information in terms of how much money it would cost to repair these? In other words, did you know upfront how much money it costs to repair a particular bus? Or you get billed after the fact?
It all depends on the condition of the vehicle at that particular point.
So at any one point in time, would you know how much money the transport board would have to foot to build certain buses that were in various garages?
Again, as I said, it depends on the condition of the bus. Because the bus
Well, it means
is
that yes or no?
a series of things you have to go through in order to get the bus worthy.
No problem. But so
One might be less
Mm.
costly than the other.
right. So any one point in time, you didn't have an idea as to how much money was really outstanding.
I would have a slight idea, but it's nothing definitive to say this is the correct number, no.
Right. Okay.
Because as I said, it fluctuates based on the condition of the vehicle.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Mr. Cousins.
Good afternoon, Mr. Trotman. Sonia Brown. This might,
Attention.
sorry, this might sound a bit basic, but could you tell me exactly what your role was at the Transport Board? I'm not sure about your job description.
My job description was the quality assurance manager.
I know the name of it,
All
but
right,
what does
that
that
is to
mean?
oversee the maintenance of the vehicles.
You could break it down a little more for somebody that's a doctor and not a. In
Well-
other words, you were responsible, apart from maintaining the buses, you were responsible for sending in the orders for parts and so on as well?
Yeah,
Okay, and you weren't responsible for where the parts or so on would come from?
no.
Okay, got you.
Mr. Codrington, how would you explain that in several instances, the completion date for repairs was showing an earlier time than the start date? In your system, the repairs are listed,
Mhm.
but the completion date is earlier than the start date. How would you explain something like that?
I'm not sure I'm following you. That song,
You don't understand, or you're not sure how that, why would
I don't understand.
you have repairs listed in your system,
Mhm.
your maintenance information system. You have repairs listed, BM 42.
Yeah,
It's going to Simpson Motors for repairs.
yeah.
The system will show the repairs finished August 5th. Start of those repairs, December 6th. The finished date of the repairs is earlier than the start date. In numerous instances.
That means that will have to be system. The system will got to generate that. I'm not aware of that.
So that'd be a systems problem.
Yeah. That doesn't,
In several instances.
right, but that doesn't reflect anything that I
This is
know
what the
about.
Auditor General's office found.
Oh, I'm not aware of that,
All right.
no.
Can you outline the procedure that is followed when buses are repaired and returned to the board? Because there were reported high frequencies of repairs on the same bus.
Mhm.
What's the system when a bus goes, what's the procedure? Bus goes repaired and is returned to the board.
Now, when it comes back to quality assurance department, the quality assurance personnel would look at what the repairs it went out for. And based on that repairs, that bus will be tested. Like, for instance, if it was engine or transmission, the bus will be tested. If there are any problems with the testing, is at that point then it is being referred to me. To carry a further look or further test has to be done on the vehicle before it goes on the road.
The procedure was documented,
Yeah,
it was written down.
yeah.
Okay. But there were those instances frequently so when buses repaired had to be returned again for repairs. Were you in any forum where this was a subject for discussion?
No,
That was never discussed at the management meeting, the frequency of repairs for buses?
the frequency, if you're talking about the
So if
frequency,
you have a problem with transmission and a bus is going to the repair people for transmission issues 3 times in a year, that's frequency. And that's one bus. There are multiple instances of that, according to the Auditor General's report. That would not become a matter that the management team
yes,
would.
that will be
That
discussed, yeah.
came up?
Yeah,
Now, Ms. Ford, former general manager, says she knows nothing of BM 506.
that, okay.
Huh?
Are you finished?
You were surprised to hear that?
You finished, sir? And then
No,
I-
are you surprised? I'm finished. Are you surprised to hear that?
Yes, I'm surprised to hear that.
That she says she knows nothing or knew
Yes,
nothing.
I'm
about
I'm totally surprised to hear that.
Mrs. Sue says she knew nothing about BM 506.
Again, I'm totally surprised.
Okay. You're of the view that both Ms. Ford and Ms. Sue knew
Was made aware, yes.
or were made aware. Who else knew?
Who
At the
else?
senior level, who else would have known?
I believe that would have been, that came from the board, I believe, but I speak on the correction. But what I want to do, sir, I want to give you copies of the memos that were sent to the general manager
All right,
and
we'll
then
be
the
happy
acting general
to
manager.
have all of those copies.
Understand? Relating to BM 506.
Yeah, happy to have all of those. Please, don't leave without making sure.
Please let it be noted that BM 506 was
All
on
right,
19.
we will see them. So there's a record
Yes,
established.
yes, very much so, sir.
And you personally would have informed the general manager these things?
Totally correct, sir.
Okay. BM 506 had been out of service
Yes, sir.
before it disappeared?
Sir, don't use the word disappeared, 'cause it didn't disappear.
Well, it didn't disappear from
No.
you, but apparently it disappeared from the view,
By any view,
from the view of others. I was out of service for how long?
BM 506 was to be refurbished 2014.
Yeah, but before it was dispensed with, it was out of service for how long?
Based on what I have here and the document, 2014, December 22nd, 2014.
So that would have been about 5 years?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. And it had been cannibalized?
Now, when it was out of service, that is where you get the cannibalism coming in.
Hmm.
So if a bus is out of service for a period of time, and we need a part to put another bus back into service, the part is gonna come from that bus.
So you got parts from BM 506 for other buses?
Of course it would have changed, 'cause that's how it get cannibalized.
And you said that originally when you came before us?
Yes, I said it was a cannibalized unit.
Okay.
That's why it was sold for $300.
Okay. Mr. Bartholomew suggested, reported, not suggested, that there were 7 buses missing, 7 buses that could not be accounted for.
I'm not aware of that, sir. What I would like, if we got buses that are missing, I want to know the numbers. Do not tell me buses are missing and do not give me the numbers.
I'm just telling you what, Mr.
No, I'm not saying you, sir.
But you heard that for the first time when you came before this committee?
This first time I'm hearing it now, that 7 buses missing.
No, we mentioned it last time you were here as well.
No, not that I can recall, sir.
I'm telling
All
you,
all we mentioned was 5 or 6.
I am telling you, we mentioned it last time you were here, but that is immaterial. That's not an issue.
I'm not aware of that.
The first
But,
time
sir,
you're hearing it is
No,
today.
yeah. But, sir, for the records, I would like to know the number of those buses that are
Well,
missing.
the first time you're hearing that it was 7 other buses, 7 buses missing, is today.
Yeah.
You never were privy to the report Mr. Bartholomew submitted,
No, not that I can recall, no.
and this issue never came up at management meetings?
No, not, that's why I said not that I'm aware of.
And the Office of the Auditor General never raised it when they did their inquiry, their audit?
No, when they did the audit, then they did the audit with me. The audit wasn't done with me.
But 7 buses could not legitimately have been dispensed with without your knowing, right?
Sir, again, I would like to see the numbers.
No, it's a general question. There's no way that 7 buses could have been legitimately dispensed with
No,
without the knowledge of the quality assurance manager.
impossible.
Not even one.
No.
Okay. Now, you said you have all of the information on BM 506.
That's correct, sir. And I'm going to give you copies.
And it seems that you're the only body in the transport board with information, all of the information on the general manager doesn't know, financial controller doesn't know, the auditors could not establish from their queries when they did the audit. It seems you're the only body who knows.
But when I present,
So you have all the information.
when I present the information from you, you will see the dates, and you will see who they were addressed it to.
All right. Yes, you, so you can provide us with all of those documents, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. You said before, let me put it this way. Are you aware of, or were you aware of when you worked at the transport board, were you aware of the practice of parts being sold from stores or vehicles at the transport board to private people?
I've heard that, sir.
You've heard that?
Yeah, very much so.
You never saw any or
No, I never.
evidence to, you never saw anything that provided evidence for you that it was a fact?
If I can go back, and this is many, many years ago. But I don't know if this is pertaining to this meeting, but I'll give you the scenario of it. Because it happened over the weekend, where one of our workmen ordered parts on one bus. When I came in the Monday and checked on the bus, I find out that those parts were ordered for this particular bus, but it never went on the bus. I wrote the then general manager and told him about it. And he told me, Mr. Codrington, okay, we got to deal with this and deal with it immediately.
Who was the general manager then?
The general manager at the time was Mr. Ian Jessamy.
Mr.
Ian Jessamy
Jessamy?
at the time. And he made his contacts, and the police was informed, and we visited the individual's home. And we discovered that there were some parts at his house that cannot be accounted for from his end. But that was a police matter and was dealt with appropriately.
That's the only instance of which you are aware that
Yeah.
this went down?
That is the one that I'm sure about. The others I've heard. I've never seen, or I was never privileged to have to call in the police in other matters. But that particular matter, we had to call the police officers to get to the bottom of that. And that was dealt with.
And as quality assurance manager, you never had any issues that you had to deal with in your personal responsibility in relation
I
to
didn't
this?
hear that.
In relation to your own function, you never had any instances where you had to deal with that, apart from that which you just
No.
talked about?
Not that I can recall.
Now, you indicated that you had a list of unserviceable buses when you last appeared before us. When asked if it included, that list included BM 506, you said no. Because we did not call in the survey team at that time as yet. You further said you were given directives to go ahead and sell BM 506. That's what you said.
Yeah, that's what I said, sir.
You would have been given directives by whom to sell BM 506?
Again, the general manager.
Ms. Ford?
Yeah.
Ms. Ford?
Again, the general manager.
General manager would have directed you to sell BM 506.
Sir,
And Mr. Codrington,
Sir.
I am not talking about a shell. I'm talking about a bus.
No, I talking about the shell, I ain't talking about the bus, because 506 wasn't a bus.
But hear me now. You indicated to us that you had a list of unserviceable buses. Buses. Unserviceable buses. When asked if it included BM 506, you said no, because we did not call in the survey team as yet for BM 506. You further said you were given directives to go ahead and sell that. And you said just now you were directed by Ms. Ford. Ms. Ford says she knows nothing about BM 506. You were given that directive in writing?
Sir, I have it here as I just, as
In
I thought,
writing?
as I thought, yes, sir.
Can you read it for us, please?
This memorandum serves to inform you that BM 506 1997, at Mangrove has been completely cannibalized, and therefore it has no economic value to the board. Mr. Calvin Catwell, former employee, has shown an interest in purchasing the body of BM 300 for $300. Please indicate whether to go on with the transaction as agreed. So that means we had discussion prior to the memo getting to her. She sent back the memo to me. and she-
But that memo is from whom?
This is from me to the general manager.
No, but I want to hear the directive from her to you.
She wrote on it. She wrote on it.
Yes, and she wrote on it.
Is the above figure comparable with similar sales of cannibalized buses within the organization? I wrote back on it and sent it back to her. The larger motor omnibus is sold for $500.
All right, so you're indicating to her that a bus shell
That's
at
correct.
Mangrove,
Correct.
a bus shell at Mangrove, she responds to that.
Yeah.
Okay. But she has accepted your memo indicating that BM 506 has totally been cannibalized.
Yeah.
What is the evidence of that? Is there any evidence of that?
The bus was there to be seen. Anybody could see that the bus is cannibalized.
But I don't know if anybody can see it. I certainly can't see it. And as far as I know, Miss Ford says she knows nothing about this, and Miss Sue says she knows nothing about this. And the only person who has said that they know anything about BM 506 is you. You have all of the information.
And I have it here to
The
prove.
memo that
can-
you are
can have the
reading, the
document.
memo that you are reading for us starts with a shell.
Yeah.
It makes reference to a shell, not to a bus.
Correct.
But you say correct. It makes reference to a shell,
Shell.
not to a bus.
No.
But I'm wanting to know what's the evidence that BM 506 has been cannibalized. We had a list of unserviceable buses. BM 506 was not on the list because we had not had the board of the survey team to look at it as yet. And then further on, you were directed to sell the bus, not the shell, according
No,
to your firm.
you see, we use the bus in layman terms, but it was a shell. It wasn't a bus. Or if I go on a bit further, and you will see where I'm coming
Your
from.
list of unserviceable buses, your list of unserviceable buses would have been a reference to bus shells or buses.
Now, when you say unserviceable buses,
No, you,
What?
you said unserviceable buses, Mr. Codron.
all right,
You.
all right, all right. Let me try to give some clarity on that. Unserviceable buses, that means they're not conducive to go on the road. I'm talking about a bus now.
But they're still buses.
I beg to disagree, sir.
All right, so BM 506, according to you, was cannibalized.
Yeah,
All what remained was a shell at Mangrove.
that's correct, sir.
You indicated to the general manager that Ms. Catlin wanted to buy this shell for
Yeah,
$300. She
correct.
queried the price.
Correct.
You indicated, yes, the bigger buses, shells,
I
are sold for $500. And you were directed by Ms. Ford to sell the bus shell.
correct.
All right. Anybody else, please? Mr.
Sir, I will give you copies and you will
Yes,
see.
yes,
you'll
we
see
want
right away.
copies of everything you have
Yeah.
down there.
Mm.
Miss Minister Jordan, Minister Husbands, Senator Drakes. Miss Minister Husbands.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to go back a little bit in your testimony with the Chair, just to clarify some things that I didn't quite get. You stated that there was a particular series of bus that had defective transmissions.
Don't even say defective. They were a bit problematic. They present a challenge. Because when you say defective, the moment you use the word defective, that means it's unserviceable. It does not constitute going on the road. So we have to be careful with that. Because when we write our report, you see a defective bus, that means that I can't go into service.
So you had a series that had transmissions that were problematic, where the bus transmission would be changed, in some cases 4 times a year, etc.
Mhm.
And as a quality assurance manager, you kept records of all of the repairs and so on.
Mhm.
When were you aware of the pattern that these transmissions were problematic? That there was a pattern that was causing close to 10 buses, based on the record that we have from the Auditor General's report, that would have had 4, in some cases 5 transmissions done in a short period of time. When were you aware of that pattern?
If I may go back, as I said earlier, in coming out of the port, we had one bus that developed that problem. And it is on the period of time going forward, we keep watching the MT643R. And the MT643R, we realize that we have some challenges going
With that
forward.
particular
That
one.
particular series.
That particular series.
Correct.
So, what, it took a year to see the pattern? Did it take a year? Did it take
It
3
took-
months, 6 months?
To be quite honest, to see a full pattern of how they operate, it took about a year to a year and a half. Well, bear in mind, the vehicles are new.
Mhm.
So you might get one, give you,
But certainly, a new bus,
yeah,
given trouble very quickly,
yeah,
would alert you.
that's correct.
Okay.
That is when we alerted the service provider.
On the problem.
Correct.
Good. What I was not clear about, you then said that you had to switch to a different transmission. You were able to get a
But
different
this is
type
for,
of
this
transmission.
is further down the road now.
Yes,
Mhm.
right. So you were able to get a transmission that could work with this particular series that did not break down as frequently. Okay. Where did this transmission come from?
The 643 transmission, that was a reconditioned transmission that came out of the United States.
Okay.
Reconditioned.
Right, right. And when did you start to use this? What year did you start to use this new transmission?
I think that was 2016. I think it was 2016.
So around 2016 was when you started to find that this particular transmission was working much better. Okay. Now, you had stated in your testimony just now that these, once you could get those transmissions, it meant that you could keep your buses on the road. So my question would be, if this particular transmission was better at keeping the buses on the road, was saving you considerable sums, because based on the Auditor General's report, you were spending something like $160,000 on a bus that you had to change 4 times, 5 times the transmission. And this new one was doing
Not new, reconditioned.
right, the reconditioned ones that you were getting from overseas were doing a much better job. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. What plan did the Quality Assurance Department put in place to ensure that you got these types of transmissions to solve your problems?
We wrote the general manager, no, we had a meeting with the general manager and let her know that the MT643 transmissions were the one to go with.
Okay.
But they're all reconditioned transmissions. Bear in mind, they're not new transmissions.
But they were lasting better than the ones that were given
Yeah.
a little trouble.
They were not better, they were lasting a bit longer.
Okay. So you spoke with Ms. Ford?
Yeah, well, the meeting, yeah.
Okay. Who was responsible for ordering the parts and determining from where the parts will be ordered?
We had the consultant. He had the contact in USA where he made that contact and tried to get in that transmission for us.
But who was it that had the authority to make that order, to make the determination that we are going to purchase these reconditioned transmissions from Florida because they were proving more effective than the other ones?
That
Who
would
was
have,
responsible?
that
Who
would've-
had that authority?
that would have come from the general manager.
Or the general manager had the authority?
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that we noted was that you purchased, I think, about 45 of those reconditioned ones.
I don't remember the number, but you go on.
Right. And we also noticed that I think it was 122 you ordered locally.
Not locally. No transmissions could be ordered locally because there's nobody on the island that manufacture the Mercedes-Benz
Oh,
transmission.
sorry. Oh, these were imported from the manufacturers of the buses and were put in by the local,
Assemble into the bus by our local technicians.
right.
So not purchased locally, because
Okay.
no transmissions can be purchased locally for the board's buses.
So how did that work? Did you pay the manufacturer for the parts? Did the transport board pay for the parts?
Well, the transmission is reconditioned, so you would pay for everything. That's the reconditioning of the transmission. So if, I don't have the exact figure how much it was, but if, let's say for instance, it's about, I don't want to use a figure because,
No, I caught on to the fact that it wasn't the local person who provided the transmission.
Correct.
It was that, the transmission from the manufacturer, the order
not
went to the
the
manufacturer.
manufacturer neither. Coming out of the USA,
No, sorry,
the
not talking
Mercedes
about the
buses do not
reconditioning.
have any manufacturer in the USA.
Sorry?
The Mercedes do not have any manufacturers in USA that would manufacture the transmission. This is,
No, sorry, I don't want to get confused. My understanding when you were first talking with Mr. Trotman, that these buses came from Brazil, this particular series,
all the
that you
bu-
had a
all-
problem
all-
with.
yeah,
Yes.
correct.
Right. And it had a transmission that gave problems, not defective, it gave problems. And so you had to change those transmissions frequently in those buses, correct?
Yeah.
So I'm now trying to understand the process for the transmission. Did the transport board order the new transmissions that came from the manufacturers, the Brazilian manufacturers of the bus? Is that where the new transmissions that would keep breaking down all the time? Where did those come from? We know those didn't come from the States. They weren't
Right.
reconditioned.
Those
Where did
ca-
those come from?
Those came from Brazil, but as I said earlier, the
Okay.
company that were manufacturing those MT643R went out of operation.
Right.
Y-
And
you
therefore,
understand what I'm saying?
so what? You were unable to get that defective transmission after a while?
That's correct, because that company is out of operation.
Good.
So you cannot get that MT643R.
But you bought 122 of those.
122 MT643R?
Well, the record here states that you would have used 45 of the recondition, and I think it was 122 of the ones at 22,000? No?
Mm-mm. That's all right.
Well, it didn't look right when I saw it in the reports. That's
Right.
why I thought I would ask you.
Yeah, that doesn't sound right. It's not clear.
Mr. Trotman, if you could.
This might call for some clarity here. I'll let my officer, Mr. Gibson, comment on that one.
Thanks.
Nigel Gibson, Barbados, or the office. The reference to the 100 and, can't remember the exact amount, but that doesn't spell out that they're all MT643 some of them might be MT643s, included in that number.
In that batch?
Yes.
Okay. And most of those, the lowest price you indicated in your report was $22,000 for those.
That's correct.
Okay. And you had the reconditioned ones, which were available for the particular series that was difficult, that was available at $6,000.
Yes, and on the invoice that I have here, it has it as an MT643 Allison transmission. It came from ATS.
That's correct.
Right. So the question I was asking, what I was not clear because I misunderstood before,
Mhm.
I thought that the local person who fixed the bus brought in the transmissions and changed them for you. But I am understanding from you that you all ordered them from outside and you brought them in, not the reconditioned ones, the ones that you needed from the actual manufacturer until they stopped producing them. That's correct?
Yeah.
Did they extend credit to the transport board?
Now, the international standard is the life of a bus is 10 years or 100,000 kilometers, whichever comes first. Yeah. So if the 100,000 kilometers or the 10 years has expired, they have no responsibility or they're not obligated to provide you with anything. Then you have to go outside of the box.
Right, but that doesn't quite answer the question as to whether or not the Brazilian manufacturer offered credit to the transport board in purchasing those transmissions, which the lowest price was $22,000.
I would not privilege to that. That has to come from the stores department or Simpson Motors, so to speak. That won't come before me.
Okay, so could you then share with us why the persistence to purchase those particular transmissions when there were reconditioned transmissions that were cheaper, that could be used to save $1 million?
I don't know we purchasing the MT643R against the other transmissions. No. That doesn't sound right. That doesn't make sense to me.
The Auditor General's report shared that a total of $1.8 million was spent on transmissions, and that the reconditioned transmissions at a price of $6,000 would have saved the board $1 million in transmission repairs.
but you could not get the MT643R, so I don't see you purchasing those transmissions because that company is out of operation.
Yeah, but those were the ones that were given trouble.
Yeah,
Right, so you wouldn't purchase those.
what is the ones that I'm talking about? You won't purchase those?
Good.
You see
So the question was, available to you was the opportunity to purchase transmissions from Florida, I believe, based on the recommendation of Mr. Bartholomew, correct?
Yeah,
And these were reconditioned. You could purchase them for $6,000, and if you sent back the old transmission, you could get back a rebate on that. That's my understanding.
yeah,
Yes?
yeah, that's correct.
Good. So the question I was asking is, why did the board continue to purchase transmissions at $22,000 when available to them was this other, and I assume that the operator out of Florida didn't only produce that particular transmission for that particular bus, but produced bus transmissions that you could get to help you reduce the cost of transmission repairs to the value of $1 million to the board. So what and who determined to purchase, to continue to purchase while the Brazilian manufacturer was still operating, continue to purchase at the higher price of 22 rather than taking on the 6,000 that you could get out of Florida? Who made that determination?
I cannot speak to that. I don't know anything about that. I wouldn't be able to speak on that.
As the quality assurance manager and therefore the technical person, you would have had to advise someone about what to purchase. I don't really know that higher up the chain, the technical knowledge was there to make that determination. Somebody had to okay and say that this was right or this was better. And I understand that you ordered those parts.
I don't order parts. I never order parts yet.
So who determined the parts to be purchased and sent forward to whoever? I'm not talking about who fills
That
out the
is
form.
Stores and
Who's the
purchase,
person?
stores and
And who
purchasing.
told stores which parts to buy?
We tell them which parts we need is right.
Right, you would
Yeah,
tell them.
Yeah, but I
Good.
don't tell them to go to John or go to Dick or go to Harry. No.
Hmm? So then, in terms of responsibility for costing and managing the finances of the department, who decided how much we could spend on what in order to keep maintenance going?
That would come from the finance department.
So by the finance department, do you mean Ms. Sue, the financial
Yeah.
controller? She would determine where the parts would come from.
Not where the parts to come from.
Okay.
She would say how much money would be allocated to X or Y.
Oh, so she would determine how much money would be allocated to transmissions?
Yeah, based on the information she get from
From
the board, so to speak.
which board?
The board that runs the transport board.
You mean the chairman and the
That-
members
yeah.
around the table were the
That's
ones
that's-
who determined
That's correct.
which parts were bought?
Exactly.
Did you provide any advice? Did you provide specs? Did you provide an opinion
Yeah, the specs will
on
be there.
which?
Yeah, we will give them the specs, we give them all the information that is required for the transmission. But as it relates to the costing of where it coming from, how much it costs, the quality assurance department manager
So,
wouldn't have anything to do with that.
so when it came to switching and getting the parts out of Florida, were you consulted about that?
When you say a
As
switch,
to whether the reconditioned part would meet the need of the transport board buses?
yeah, because we already try the reconditioned ones, so we would know going forward.
So you gave your you gave your opinion, your professional opinion,
That's
yes,
correct.
this can work for you.
Yes,
Okay. And then you're saying that it was the board then who would sit and look at the two sets of transmissions and the
costs,
costs,
right, correct,
and would say which ones were to be purchased.
correct.
Okay. And how would that be communicated back to you?
That would not be communicated back to me. That would go to the finance department
Mhm.
in order for there to get the necessary finance for it, and then it would go from there.
And then it would go to the board, and if the board approve whatever,
Right.
would this be communicated back to you in a
No.
management meeting? The board has approved these parts for purchase.
I don't recall seeing any memo to that effect.
You
no.
didn't see anything?
No.
Okay. So, as the quality assurance manager, when these transmissions now come in from the Brazilian manufacturer, when you had already had the experience that the reconditioned worked better for you, how did you address this in your management meetings? Because they're still giving you a part
Mhm.
that is breaking down. When you already have an experience with a different part that works better for the board, and because it doesn't break down, obviously would save money. How did you address that problem as the head
And
of
the-
quality assurance?
In the monthly report, it will be noted that the transmissions coming out of the USA, reconditioned transmissions, are working relatively well. And this is the area that we would continue to look at. If there are any issues, we will further present the evidence.
So,
But- Yeah.
that is my question.
Mhm.
As a manager,
Mhm.
you've indicated
Yeah.
that these work better. These break down very quickly.
Mhm.
You have to keep repairing. You can't keep your buses on the road. It's affecting revenue. It is throwing your budget, your income, all of your totally out of whack. So when you learn that a decision is taken to purchase more of these transmissions with problems instead of the other ones that from your experience of using them before works better for you, did you raise this as an issue to management?
But the management will be made aware of what is going on with the reconditioned transmissions. So we will continue to follow that vein.
So how did you feel about getting parts that could break down more quickly rather than getting parts that could last a little longer as a manager? And how did you deal with it?
When you say parts that are breaking down quickly, no manager or no maintenance individual is going to order a part in his view that is going to break down within a matter of 6 months to a year.
Right, so
Mhm.
I'm asking you the question.
Mhm.
You're saying that you would not do that. And I'm asking the question, when you are presented with parts coming in that will not do the job for you, how did you deal with that as head of the quality assurance department? What steps did you take to get some kind of change to the transmissions that were being ordered when better transmissions, cheaper transmissions were available to the board?
You will write the stores and purchasing department and copy to the general manager.
Mm. And do you have copies of that
No,
kind
I
of
won't
record?
I won't have copies of this here, no.
So how did you raise it with the stores department? How did you raise it with
By
the general manager?
writing the store department or having a meeting with the supervisors in the store department.
Did you raise this question to Ms. Ford when you all had management meetings? Did you question why these particular transmissions were purchased?
No,
Why not?
because I know they were already ordered. So,
But you all kept ordering them for 3 years. So my question
no,
is,
go on.
My question is,
For 3 years, I'm not sure of the years.
between 2015 and 2018, I believe,
It can't be that far.
that's what the report says.
Well, the
Between
report
2015 and
is not, that report
2018?
is not accurate.
The
Because
Auditor General's report made an error then, is what you're
there
saying?
is a possibility. The reason for saying that
Mhm.
is because Mr. Bartholomew came to the Transport Board February 2016.
Oh, Ms. Ford had indicated to us that his recommendation about the reconditioned transmissions was made before he came as a consultant.
That is probably having dialogue on phone, WhatsApp.
Exactly. And
Right.
therefore,
But
the
I'm telling, I'm basing my argument on what I see before me.
right, but you would have been having some of those transmissions from 2015, 2016, 17, and 18,
Well,
both
I-
sets of transmissions.
I wasn't aware of that then.
So, on being given a less than optimal transmission, you raised nothing at the management meeting concerning this? You made no representation to have it changed?
No, but
As
if
the
it,
quality assurance
if it
manager.
is working, and is working to suit our terrain, why complain about it?
Which ones are you complaining about?
Listen, Mr., Minister,
Yeah, go ahead.
Husbands, you were saying that there were some transmissions, some vehicles, some buses out of Brazil that weren't performing well, yeah?
Yeah,
And that you had problems with the transmissions, etc.
this is the MT-643.
Yes,
R.
yes, yes.
All the
yes, yes.
transmissions came out of Brazil.
Yeah, but when you had to address the problems of transmissions, there was a source of supply of reconditioned transmission out of the States, cheaper than was available here locally.
We don't have any transmission locally. Are you talking about available locally? We don't have no available local transmissions.
The matter of addressing repairs of transmissions, reconditioned transmissions,
Yeah.
there was a source of supply out of the States.
Yeah,
And that would have been cheaper than having anything done with the transmission here locally?
that is based on what the consultant said. You understand me?
No, I don't. Try it again.
Because the MT-643 transmission in the 1997 buses, those transmissions work relatively well.
The only ones that didn't work well.
The MT-643.
And how did you address that?
We addressed that by alerting the management, the board, and Simpson Motors. And by constantly having to repair them, that is where they decide then to change and have the MT-643 fitted to the buses with the MT-643R. We were
Miss-
getting some out of Brazil, but then the consultant came on board,
Mr. Bartholomew?
right, and said he know of people who can recondition the transmissions, send the shell, and then you can have them returned.
That's
That
the
is
people
what-
in the States?
Yes.
And as opposed to having them addressed here?
When you say address here, what do you mean?
Brazil then?
Brazil would address the MT-643,
All right,
not
Mr.
the R.
Codrington, you were happy with what was done by the management of the Transport Board to address your problems with transmission?
If I was happy?
Yes,
Yes, to an extent I was happy, yes.
all right. So you had no reason to document in memo or anything like that, any concern or issue relative to transmission?
But we would have documents, we would have documents in relation to that.
They're available?
But no, I wouldn't have them here before me. I would
You
to-
have them?
I would have to do some research to get those documents.
When you say do research together with me. Because I'm watching the time here. We passed the time.
Sir,
Yes.
don't forget, I no longer work for the Transport Board. I'm retired.
So you don't have them in your possession
That's
anywhere?
that's the point I'm making.
Okay. Okay. All right. Anything else, Miss Minister Husbands? We gotta watch the time, please. And we still have another matter to address after this. One last question?
Yes, thank you. The last question that I wanted to clarify was on a yearly basis, therefore, when you were planning for maintenance of the buses, the issue of the transmissions, how did you arrive at how many you would order or make preparations for, put aside in the budget for dealing with that matter? And what was it based on? The Florida or the Brazilian transmission?
It was based on the Brazilian transmission.
So that's what you all budgeted for?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you. And sorry we've kept you this long.
Sure.
Quick question, Mr. Chapman.
Yeah, just a quick question. I think Mr. Gibson wants to ask a quick question.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Mr. Codrington, what are the major components of a bus? What would you consider the major components of a bus? You talk about the shell. What are the other components of a bus?
The major components are the engine, transmission, differential.
Yeah.
And if you want to say a gearbox, so I call we have some manual buses. Transmission and a manual gearbox is something completely different.
What about the chassis?
No, the chassis, you can't do anything with the chassis. Chassis is nothing that you can do anything with. The chassis is standard.
Okay.
And when I say a standard, I want to bear in mind, not for the 1997 Hino, but the Hino is a smaller bus, and the 2000 and 2004, 1997, those chassis are Mercedes chassis. So that has nothing to do with the Hino. The Hino chassis and the Mercedes chassis, two different things altogether.
So what would have happened to the chassis for BM506?
But the chassis would go over the bus, will go over the shell. They cannot remove the chassis from the shell, because that's a part of the component that will go over the shell.
Okay, so it was more than a shell, but the shell and chassis.
You can't say it on the you can't say it on chassis,
Okay.
because chassis has to be there. If you remove the chassis, what would you have? You will have nothing.
But I think that provides clarity as to exactly what was sold then. Because
Yeah.
when you heard about the shell, you just talk about the outer part of the
Oh, you're
bus.
talking,
But the chassis, but you're saying in addition to the shell, there was a chassis also sold.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Normally when buses are coming out of the port or coming to Barbados, they come in as chassis, and then you have to place the body. But you don't sell a chassis.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Senator Drix, the last question for Mr. Codrington.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Mr. Codrington.
There you go, ma'am.
One or two questions, just very quickly. Did you ever receive ongoing correspondence from Ms. Sue in relation to the high costs of maintenance and repairs that were ongoing?
There is a possibility, yeah. But one has to bear in mind,
But Mr. Codrington, I don't understand. I mean, there's a question was, if I heard correctly, did you ever receive correspondence from Ms. Sue as to the high cost, right? Is that, yeah.
Ongoing correspondence in relation to the high cost of maintenance.
So that's a year on there, or I don't recall.
I said yes, probably, but I'm trying to explain how people arrive at the high cost. 'Cause in layman terms, anybody can say man has a high cost. And it always happens. Then when I send in people then to do an analysis, it's completely different. to what the layperson is saying.
So, to follow on from that, then, was it then a regular occurrence that you would provide that type of analysis to the financial controller
No, on any regular basis, no.
at any time? Was that done during the period under review? 2015
It would be
2018?
mentioned in the monthly report, but it won't go directly to the finance, it will go to the general manager, if anything.
Okay, thank
Ms.
you.
Codrington,
Mr.
do you know
Codrington.
if Mr. Transtech, Mr. Brathwaite, did he ever reimburse the transport board as far as you were $128,000, which would have been overpaid due to over invoicing? You aware of that?
I'm not aware, sir.
All right.
But
I want to thank you for coming this afternoon. Sorry we've kept you a bit beyond time, but members had questions that they wanted clarify, issues that they wanted to clarify. I thank you,
thank you, sir.
and I pray that you would stay safe and stay well.
Likewise to you,
And
sir.
we excuse you at this moment.
But I need these copies for you, sir.
Yes, everything that you have there, that's the document form that you talked about. Yeah, yeah. There's a refreshments downstairs, Mr. Codrington. You're welcome to stay and partake thereof.
All right, sir.
Nothing strong.
Well, I don't go strong.
This is
I
not
keep
a-
it simple.
This is not a strong crowd. This is not a strong crowd here.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone.
It's not a strong crowd. Strong crowd is your chooses. Listen, folks, you would be given two handouts. One is a proposed focus, read the 2019 auditor's report and the 2020 auditor's report. Earlier correspondents would have suggested that in the month of July, we'd like to look at the 2019 report, which basically addresses issues at the Barbados Water Authority, and the 2020 report in the month of August, which addresses a few issues. The Ministry of, what do you call it? Some aspects of the operations of this poverty, what do you call it? Poverty alleviation, poverty program in Barbados, alleviation program in Barbados, Clearwater, et cetera, LIAT, and stuff like that. We had proposed that is how we proceed in terms of our focus, so that we come to